This Green Garden Award winner actually begins in the front yard. Since 2005, when Sherry Cordry and Paul Mair moved in with their family, they've turned the front yard into the neighborhood bistro and playground.
It was a desert. We had 3 trees and just grass, that was all. And it was very plain, very boring, and incredibly large. And in front of the house, there were these great big photinias that must have been 7 feet tall, and they were right up against the house and blocked all the sun. And then there were some purple sages, and my husband Paul, they weren't doing very well, and so he got his truck, put a chain around him, and just yanked him out.
It was a pickup, this Ford Explorer.
I thought he was crazy when he told me he was going to do that, but it worked really well.
The neighbors were like, "Yeah, Paul."
I wanted a social space that would be a place where we could sit and enjoy the sunset, have some privacy, but yet we have a little boy and we wanted to be able to see him as he played on the street with the other kids, because this is a cul-de-sac, and yet not be on display. So we planned this patio with bushes and trees around it that provided privacy but also had view spaces.
We wanted to do a different entryway. There was just a sidewalk that was done with concrete. So I wanted to look out the house and have the fountain in front of us, and then go through the trees and go out and redirect the sidewalk, so you actually walk through the space.
And it's really great that we can sit out here, have a glass of wine, have dinner, have coffee, and see our neighbors and wave at them.
And the neighbors come over quite often and join us.
It's made for a real good social environment on the street. I knew that I wanted a real defined structure to the garden, and that's why we have the vertical lines and height. But then I wanted the agaves and the sharpness and the gray, and then some softness to soften it all out. I like the grays and whites because in the summer it's cooling to look at. But yet we didn't want to give up color. We've also tried to incorporate things that will bloom by the seasons. So we're going for coolness and low water use and easy maintenance. And then I'm a plant person. I like one of this, one of that. And I had talked with a local designer here in town, Nancy Weber, and she really stressed to me that with a big house, you needed to have several plantings of the same.
Nancy was very helpful to encourage us to make the beds big and wide and connect them all. So Sherry had a great time going through her books and finding all kinds of the different vegetation and plants for the garden, and we haven't stopped yet. We're still. I still come home and there's another 20 plants. It's like, Sherry, you got to stop.
Well, that's probably not going to happen as long as Sherry owns a shovel.
Some plants work well where I put them the first time, but then I keep telling Paul, gardening is you have to find the right place for your plant, and you do the best you can the first time, but it may not work out, and so you move it. Like I have agaves, you would think, the toughest, hardest plants around, and there are certain areas in the garden that they don't like it. It's too much water, not enough drainage, and so they've died there. And where I've been able to rescue them and move them to a less friendly or a drier environment anyway.
When I first came to the United States, I lived in a very suburban neighborhood, and it was all St. Augustine and very few plants. So coming from Germany with such a rich vegetation we've had, and it took me a while to discover this here, and and established a richness in landscaping. When I look at pictures from the spring, from last year and this year, it's completely different. And whatever is today, it's going to be totally different next year again. Just the richness, the fullness that we actually have whole walls that are green now, and we don't just look at a fence that is a cedar fencing, but it is a lot of vegetation on it, and it's every day, I mean, changing and pretty to look at.
Some of the other neighbors have started to also take up their front yards and take up the grass, put things at the median, and so we're going to start a garden club, and we're going to focus on xeriscape, low water use, design, adaptive plants. I really encourage people to do more gardening in the front yard, to make a social space where they can feel comfortable, so that they can get to meet their neighbors, so they can play in the front yard with their kids, or hang out with their friends. And that's made such a change in getting to know people and really using the space that supports the way you want to live.